This is kind of like the end of season 1 here.
It is. Welcome to all the horrible things.
Yeah, indeed.
We're
Welcome
hosts.
welcome to all the horrible things. End of the year jamboree.
That's right. 2022 flew by. It was beautifully horrific.
Oh God!
All sorts of macabre business occurred during this year, both in real life and on screen. But we're going to celebrate that which was on screen and horrific.
Yeah, the things that we actually liked.
Yes.
The things we
liked. Not the
atrocities
that's happening in the real world.
No. We're trying to escape that with this episode.
Indeed. I think watching horror helps us deal with the actual horrors in the world.
100%. I
cushions the blow, because it's like, hey, at least we're not being disemboweled. So there's that.
there's always that.
So we are today going to kind of dissect the highs and the lows of the years in terms of film as well as series. Granted, there's definitely less TV series that we're going to be talking about just because I think there's not enough horror TV series out there or streaming series as it is.
That's a good point.
Maybe we should start with the TV series that were hit or miss for us this year.
All right.
Since it is kind of a smaller one, then we can go into the deep dive of the film. Because otherwise I feel like the streaming TV is going to be an afterthought. But yeah, which one would you say like really knocked your socks off this year?
Okay, well I could put two up there that knocked my socks off. One I was anticipating, which was Wednesday.
Yes,
I was really looking forward to that.
Wednesday was predictably good.
Yes, and Wednesday was 2022's like exciting new series that got pushed back and was well worth the wait. And then the other show I would say that knocked my socks off was Cabinet of Curiosities, Guillermo del Toro's anthology series that I knew was coming, but I wasn't I guess anticipating it to be that good. I guess I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, I know you really love anthologies, but I always know how hit or miss they are. So yeah. I can't say that I was super excited for them. But when it did come out, I loved the meta frame. I loved how much he put of himself into it. It was very Guillermo flavored. And I loved 4 of the 8. So it would definitely, it's up there for me in terms of horror. And it did have some like legit horror moments. That I would say is the drawback of Wednesday, and that it is maybe too horror comedy if we're talking like straight horror. Loved it though, of course, but you don't see enough grisly stuff in there. Granted, because it is kind of probably more aimed at young adults, but
true.
Nevertheless, as the geezer that I am, I still adored it, and it had enough horrific tropes that. It counts. It qualifies, and it was gold. It was gold throughout.
What, in your opinion, knocked your socks off as far as streaming in 2022?
Well, it's kind of I wanted I'm not 1899, but Archive 81 to be as good as it was in the first half of the season throughout. It kind of disassembled toward the latter half of the season, but I would say what intrigued me the most from the onset was Archive 81. I got goosebumps seeing that weird beastie on the screen. That gave me chills. Archive 81 really hit home at first, and it was what I was the most excited about, and I'm really bummed that they're not getting a second season of that. So that, I guess, would probably be the scariest one if we were to qualify what I felt was scariest. I felt the tone of that really hit me. But in terms of the Wednesday, my Wednesday was The Baby. I'm not sure you've seen The Baby on HBO.
I haven't started it yet. It's on HBO Max.
Oh, it's so fun and really graphic too, with this baby that has these really demonic qualities but looks super adorable. And it's a British horror comedy, but that's really strangely deep too, and an awesome protagonist that you follow throughout, and her crazy woman that's with her as well. Great characters all around on The Baby. I think it's one that people are snoozing on that they got to catch.
Okay, that's good to know.
What about the mediocre realms?
Well, I was going to say, for me, as much as I enjoyed Archive 81 or parts of it, having it being or like not continuing almost ruins the entire thing for me.
I agree.
Yeah.
because there was so many questions left unanswered at the end that it's just like they pulled the rug out from under us as
Yeah.
those who were excited about it, and that's a bummer.
Something that I was excited about and also enjoyed moments of it was the Korean show All of Us Are Dead.
But did you finish it?
Yeah.
You did. Okay, I liked it too. I got deep into it, but at some point enough time had passed where I wasn't going to go back.
Yeah.
You know?
They were very long episodes.
I think there's probably only 3 episodes, but okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that they really milked the hell out of that show, which,
yes,
you know, is super expensive, especially when you're doing a zombie show.
Right.
I think that show would have been much better if they had just shortened it,
tightened it
You're
up. Absolutely right. There were some fun characters, some really interesting family dynamics that were going on too, and even the relationship between the kids. They had some archetypal stuff, but they did have some less assuming characters that I did enjoy. But you're absolutely right. The problem with the show is there was too many fluff episodes, too many episodes that were kind of like pointless and meaningless, and the same thing happened again and again, running down the hallways, getting in a new classroom, putting desks against the door again, sort of thing. It just it was repetitive, but you're right, it did have like legit horror moments in every single episode. It just I don't know, I don't know if did it stick the landing? Is there going to be more?
No, and I don't know if there's going to be more, but I will say this: it was almost like watching 2 seasons worth of material stretched out, or pushed into one, because they could have stopped after episode like 6.
Yes,
left us on more of a cliffhanger.
I totally agree.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a sucker for a zombie show still. I don't know what it is. I know that the whole genre has been just bashed over our heads, and I would imagine I thought I heard something about someone buying the rights to Romero's Day of the Dead, basically buying the rights and trying to continue that, and I don't know if we need it, especially now.
No, I don't know if we need it either, because on my need to, or potentially haven't seen but might want to, is the new Walking Dead. I don't know if you've seen this Tales of the Walking Dead. It's like the new incarnation. I'm pretty sure it's the second spinoff.
Tales of the Walking Dead is an anthology series of the Walking Dead.
Okay.
Yeah. And they've gotten some bigger names to come in. I've watched a couple episodes of those where if you're going to do a zombie series, it's almost best to jump around instead of spending the same time on a group. Like I will say, one of the biggest disappointments, not of just this year, but the last several years of just the actual Walking Dead, ended on a very frustrating moment. I mean, they're going to spin it off to several shows, and it was almost a cop out of like not ending the actual Walking Dead show.
Yeah. I mean, after a while, that show felt like more of a money grab and a merch ploy than anything else.
Absolutely.
It was obviously really great from the start, but then I would say I think I abandoned it soon after Rick's son died. Spoiler alert. He lost the eye, and then he subsequently dies pretty soon after that, if I remember.
That character.
And even then, I was just more like background fodder for me. But you're saying Tales of the Walking Dead? You've watched some, and it's good as these individual stories?
I watched the first 2 episodes, I believe. I think I watched 2, and they were entertaining because you're jumping into a moment instead of watching years worth of just dialogue and then little sections of action or drama. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So there's an episode with Terry Crews,
okay.
And he's awesome, and he's very fun to watch. He has a really good episode, and his character lives in a bomb shelter, decides to finally leave to actually meet a pen pal, and it's really interesting. And I almost think that's the way, almost the same way that, and this is something else we could talk about, we have talked about, is American Horror Story doing American Horror Stories. This is the equivalent of that. It ties into the world, but we're jumping into flashes of people's experience within the apocalypse.
All right, I'm going to have to give that one a shot then. There's another one that I just came across that I hadn't really heard about until I started doing researches on streaming horror that's recently come out. And there's this show called From. Have you heard of this show at all?
You
It's
know,
from the executive producer of Lost.
I think I've heard of it, but I have not seen the
The
show. No.
premise looks pretty cool. I mean, it seems like the star is Harold Perrineau. I remember him best as Mercutio from Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Of course, he was also in Lost too. What it's about ultimately, like holding a whole town captive. People who enter this town can't leave because of some sort of machinations. That's really kind of only gist I know so far, but it sounds good, and he's a good enough actor that I'm going to definitely give it a shot because of him. He's underrated, that guy. He's great.
Oh yeah, I mean, wasn't he also on or in the Matrix films and?
God, was he? I don't remember him from Matrix.
Yeah.
Like the sequels?
Yes, yeah, the sequels.
Okay. That I believe. Yeah.
Where's that streaming? Sorry, do you know offhand?
I don't.
That's okay.
Know right off the top of my head.
Worth doing the research. It sounds like a cool premise.
Yes. The other one that I'm desperate to see, I don't know how I haven't watched it yet, is Los Spookies. Have you watched this yet?
I have not, and I've heard great things. And I also heard they just canceled it.
Oh, that sucks. So 2 seasons and that's gone. I know when I was looking up lists, that was like 1 or 2 on a couple lists of the best horror out there. I mean, it sounds more like comedy horror from what I can tell.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. Fred Armisen's in it.
Yes, I gotta catch that one. Even though it's canceled, I gotta catch it.
Yeah.
I'm still having trouble seeing where. Oh, it's on Epix. Okay, From is on Epix.
Of course it is. You know, Epix is doing a really great job though of coming up with horror television, and it makes you almost want to subscribe because they started off with Chapel Wait, which is the Stephen King story that ties into Salem's Lot. They have another one that. Well, anyway, it sounds like Epix is putting some money into horror television.
That's good. I mean, Shudder doesn't do any TV series, right? They're just strictly movies.
They do. It's just that people don't necessarily talk about them. They have a couple. They have a TV a series called Slasher, which might be worth looking into. But I'm guilty of not jumping into their TV shows, but more just watching the new released films.
I think I did watch a season of Slasher, and it was pretty decent. People living in an apartment complex together.
There's some really nasty rumors going around right now that AMC isn't necessarily in love with Shudder's numbers, which is very disappointing. The idea of them getting rid of Shudder when they could get rid of AMC Plus, which no one is talking about.
I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah. So let's hope they don't cancel Shudder on us.
Yeah, that would suck.
It would. It would suck.
The last one that I haven't seen that I want to see is this animated one called Little Demon. I don't know if you heard about it, but some girl whose dad is the devil or something.
Yeah, that's on FX.
Animated horror is rare.
It's I believe it's Danny DeVito and his daughter.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's on FX.
Okay, have you watched it or
no? No, I haven't. It's on my list as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I do want to mention some kind of like mediocre ones. I was really, really, really enjoying the Interview with the Vampire series.
Yeah.
And then they cast this person as the Kirsten Dunst role, as the Claudia role, the young girl vampire, and she's very distracting. She's not as good as the two mains, and I kind of have lost interest in it since she's popped up.
Same here.
Granted, I know what happens to this character,
of
so
course.
I'm going to probably look forward to that happening to this character sooner than later and go back, just simply because New Orleans is featured so beautifully in it. And it is rich and actually takes new angles on Interview that weren't taken in the film, that I think are more akin to what goes on in the novel. And I have hope that it could bring this series attention that it deserves. I remember when I was younger, I loved that movie, Interview with the Vampire.
Same here.
That was one I remember writing papers on in college and just loved the atmosphere, so much of it. So at first I thought they were doing a great job of it, and then I just felt like, okay, this is getting repetitive again, which is so hard not to do. And one that I know we're going to eventually talk about, and I haven't finished it yet, is Let the Right One In. That's another one where it really kicks ass to begin with, and then as you get mid-season, it just kind of slows down and is not as exciting. And that's where I am right now. So I remember being excited about watching episodes of both of those, and now I'm at the point where I they're piling up, and
Yeah.
I know I'll definitely finish Let the Right One In, but I'm not sure about Interview with the Vampire at this point.
I hear you. I am also behind on Interview with the Vampire. I think the season is concluded. I think I stopped right after the new character joined in as well.
That Claudia is so annoying. Plus, what made Kirsten Dunst so good is that she was 12 years old when she was cast, and it was so appropriate. But you got this girl who's 19 playing the 12-year-old, and it just doesn't have that same sort of effect.
I agree. The problem with this character is that she learns that she'll never grow old, and being stuck as a 12-year-old would suck. Being stuck as a 19-year-old sounds awesome.
That's true. Well, that's also what makes it so muddled, is because this character in Interview, the series, it seemed much more sexualized than Kirsten Dunst.
And they did that on purpose, and it's a cop out because
I agree.
Okay, you wanted to make that's True Blood, right? You want to do sexy vampires? That's another show.
It has very True Blood vibes, that character. Yeah, I completely agree. One that I mentioned earlier, and you said you were struggling with, was 1899. I did watch the whole thing. I really enjoyed it, mostly because of their predecessor, Dark, which just knocked my socks off with how amazingly intricate, and the storytelling that was done in that is like next level in terms of like sci-fi horror-ish vibes. It's Shakespearean in what it does with its characters and like how it saw future plot and executed it so well. So I have that same sort of hope for 1899. And all I can say for those who struggle with the atmosphere, being stuck in a boat, you might not have to worry about that if it does get picked up again, sort of thing.
Sure,
I don't want to spoil anything. But what do you struggle with? It was just too many characters, too many languages?
No, I in fact loved all that, and I didn't necessarily have an issue with them being on the boat. I think I had an issue with how certain episodes dragged. Like we just saw them running around in a maze.
Okay, I hear you there. Yes, I felt like there was a lot of pushing of plot points, and you do see them run down the halls very often.
A lot.
It did have a cyclical nature to it. And what's interesting is in Dark, that cyclical sort of thing kind of works. So I'm hoping that is then, when you look at it in retrospect, pointing to the grander theme of what's going on cyclically. But yeah, I get it. And Mara had the same problem we were watching. It's like, didn't we just see this scene over and over again? So I get that, but I really am hoping that it was purposely done for the sake of what the payoff is. And I really just love, this is the second show that's ever used these big screens as the background. No longer is there green screens, but they filmed it with legitimately huge, whatever, 16K.
Well, the Mandalorian invented like this idea of
that did that too. Was that the first one?
I think Jon Favreau was the one who brought that into. It's not necessarily a green screen, but they created like this. It's almost like around them completely too.
Yes, which is awesome. It's like ultimate VR.
Yeah.
But that pays off because it looks phenomenal. The look of the show is great. And I credit the husband-wife team that does that. But I see where you're coming from. I don't think it is as easy to sell as other shows at all.
And having said all the things about the maybe boring might be a little harsh. The slower moments, I still recognize it as good television. I know the writing's good. The idea is super cool, especially when you look at where the show starts and where season 1 ends. Really, really cool. Didn't necessarily see that coming. However, I will wait for season 2 and hopefully really enjoy that.
And speaking of Lost, I felt like it really shared a structure with Lost in that you kind of like get introduced to the backstory of a new character every episode. I had mixed feelings at first, but I thought it paid off. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was going to add one more to our list that we almost, I don't want to say forgot about, maybe put out of our minds. Remember, we did an episode about this too. Resident Evil.
Oh my God, I didn't even put it on the list either.
I know, and that's another one that was sort of disappointing, a very big miss.
Yeah, it had moments. It definitely did. But yeah, I'm not sad that it's not coming back because it took up a lot of time. I feel like there was a lot of episodes that one, like at least
Yeah.
10 or 12, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was not crunchy. It was definitely uh very viscous. I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't do it for me. Couple other ones I do want to mention is we both like Shining Vale, good horror
Oh
comedy,
yeah. Yep.
worth a watch. My biggest disappointment was I had high hopes for the show Paper Girls. I don't know if you've watched that. It's
Did
about
not. It's on
these four
AMC
paper
though,
girls
right?
dealing with this horrific multi-dimensional sort of thing that's going on. It's canceled, and I think that's good because whereas the comic book is supposed to be like really groundbreaking, interesting, the actors and just the production value of it on Amazon struggles sometimes. I feel like with what they put out there series wise, was really subpar. And really, just honestly, the girls were not characters that you latched onto. I don't know if
Mm.
actors or what. It just didn't suck you in at all. Got through the first episode and we were out. It was done. Weren't good enough. And then finally, I've started it, but I haven't finished it. The Patient. Have you watched this on FX? Because
No.
it's essentially a
Oh, you
serial
know
killer.
what? I threw me for a loop there. Was I have seen half of it. I
Half
need
the
to,
whole series.
yeah, and I need to finish it.
Yeah.
I that was another one where I sort of just took a break from maybe, and now it just piled up.
Yeah. Yes. I do want to go back to that one because I love Steve Carell so much
Yeah.
and love him in that part. And I love Gleason so much.
So good.
Speaking of which, it's not a horror, but I recently watched Banshees of Inisherin, which
his
has
father?
Brendan Gleeson, the father of the serial killer in this. And it's amazing. And frankly, it does have some horrific aspects to it. But the Gleason family is so freaking good. Outside of the horror too is a show called Bad Sisters on HBO, and it has Gleason's other son in it in a large part. And I had never seen him act before, and he's awesome too. And in a way that's dealing with a murder as well, so it's not traditional horror, more thrillery, I guess. But yeah, the Gleason family can do no wrong, and that's why I'm definitely going to finish The Patient. Because he plays a good serial killer, and I like
He does.
He's got these interesting quirks too. He's always drinking like a big gulp.
Yeah,
I feel like it's been written really interestingly.
Yeah.
And I want to see what happens with it. So I'm going to go back to The Patient. It's a little bit of a slower burn for horror because you're kind of more dealing with the psyche of a serial killer than actually seeing him do the killings. But it's worth a look. It is. But that covered it, right? Was there anything else we missed? Oh, I guess we could just mention Stranger Things 4 knocked it out of the park this season.
Yeah.
I thought it was really exceptional.
Yeah.
For me, it goes 3. Season 3 is my favorite. 1, and then 4, and then 2. But 3 and 4 are very close in my books in terms of quality.
Yeah, they did a good job in season 4 bringing it back into the horror verse.
Yes, I completely agree there. Yeah. Well, let's dive into some of the TV. I'm sorry, not the TV, the films.
The films
that knocked it out of the park. Granted, a lot of these movies went straight to streaming, straight to TV. So.
Let's work backwards here. Let's go up to the wire, because I know that we were trying to fill in some movies here before we recorded this. I want to talk about those because I think I slept on some of them, me too. A couple of them that I watched, I really, really liked and are on my list. So I would love to talk about some of the ones that we, waited to the final moments to watch.
Well, in a lot of cases, I hadn't even heard of them until I went to the top horror movies of 2022 on the Rotten Tomatoes and the consensus, and then literally in the top 10, I'd only maybe seen half of them, which kind of blew my mind because I'd never even heard of some of these ones that are ranked so ridiculously high, including number 1, which I don't think you've gotten a chance to see yet, which I literally just finished 20 minutes ago. And it made my top 10. Granted, it might have a recency bias, but it was so freaking cool. And it's put together by a family, the Adams family, only one D. But
that's
Hellbender.
Brilliant.
Have you even heard of Hellbender?
I have heard of it. It's on Shudder, right?
Yes, it is a Shudder film.
It's on my list. It's in my queue. I just haven't watched it.
Oh my god, it was freaking cool. Yeah, and usually I kind of put off these horror movies the other night, maybe have a cocktail with it, go I get sucked in even more. We're talking a morning view, stone cold sober here, and I freaking loved it, man. It did stuff I'd never seen before done with Wiccan lore.
Now, is this about a teenage girl primarily, and she learns her family is sort of into witchcraft? or is that
She kind of, well, okay, so I would argue that she's not the lead. I would say because it
okay?
really just follows her and her mother, and they both, I say, have equal clout in it, or equal playtime, if you will.
Okay,
And they're both fascinating characters. But the allegory is ultimately this mother is seeing her daughter kind of come into her own and starting to realize that she's a witch. So it's all this allegory of, like, coming of age sort of thing, but
sure.
as a witch, and not really understanding that she was what she is. And her dark side kind of just starts pulling her more and more in, and her mother's trying to fight it. And there's certainly like aspects of addiction into it too. Kind of like brings me back to like Willow and Buffy, where she starts dabbling with the magic, and it gets darker and darker and sucks her in more and more until she finds out like she's like a fungus sort of thing, and how she reproduces
Ooh,
is self-reproduction, but something has to happen before that can occur. That's really interesting, and her ultimately becoming like scarier than her mom, who's
wow.
essentially trying to keep her more like a person, more like human than this dark entity. And uh it's just the film making alone, just like the cinematography and strikingly the coloring of it really was noticeable to me. I was just enamored with this film, and found it also so interesting that you have a father uh and his two daughters and his wife are all the leads in this movie.
Okay,
It's a complete family affair. And at first, because I hadn't looked into it, I was like, damn, that's some good casting. She really looks like her mom. And that's because it was her mom.
that's so cool.
Um, and I think you're gonna love it. The other which one that did make my top list was what is it? You're not gonna be alone, right? You won't be alone. That was the one with Naomi Rapis, with she was stuck in a cave, and then it's that transmogrifying
Oh
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You definitely saw that one too.
We talked about that one earlier in the year. Yeah.
Okay, what were some of the other new ones that weren't on your radar that you recently watched?
Well,
That hit it.
I won't say that it wasn't on my radar because I have heard. I think maybe through Letterbox, people talking about it throughout the year was Speak No Evil. This is
Oh,
about
okay. I haven't seen this one.
okay. So this is about a family, I believe Norwegian family, Danish family. They're on vacation in Italy, and they meet
Okay.
this other family from Holland, and they sort of hit it off, and they both go home, and then they get the Danish family, they get a message from, like, a postcard from the Holland family saying, drive down here, we really liked you, our son liked your daughter when they're really little kids, and
Okay.
come stay with us, and everything, we'll take care of everything. And it's basically like a hospitality horror, if you will, because they welcome into their
Really
home, and then things just each night get a little bit weirder. Like,
interesting.
here's not a spoiler, but our main the mom is a vegetarian, and as soon as they go to the home in Holland, it's like they had forgotten she was a vegetarian, and they start pushing like meat on her and things like that. It's almost like
Ah,
they're gaslighting them, but like
I
in a much
see.
shorter period of time. And then yeah, just things spiral out of control. But it's really really interesting. And by the
Okay.
end of the
Yeah,
movie,
that sounds good.
it's it's just you're all tensed up, and it was
Huh.
surprisingly good. Now another one that I had heard about and just sort of like put it off was Sissy. And Sissy, I know we were talking
Okay.
before we started recording, is more of like social media or millennial horror. It's
Right.
how basically I think it was about depression, and not
Depression
being
and anxiety.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, and not being okay with who you are necessarily.
Right.
And
Um.
this one surprised me. Like I didn't really know what to expect. It was almost like Bridesmaids meets, because
A
it's
slasher movie.
yeah,
It turns into a slasher pretty much, where
yeah,
people start dropping like flies.
yeah.
Thanks to our lead, who
Sissy,
is almost like a reluctant
Cecilia,
killer in a way until the end, where she kind of starts to embrace it more.
yeah.
Because for the most part, I mean, it wasn't like, it's not intentional murder, you know.
No, no, there
There's
wasn't her.
fits of rage or anxiousness that lead to a lot of the deaths here.
Yeah, and so
right?
not to try to find a comparison between this and Speak No Evil, what I was just talking about, but the thing about both of these movies that was really interesting is letting people treat you the way you don't want to be treated.
Oh
So
yeah,
in the Speak
yeah.
No Evil, they're pushing these things on them because they can, and they're just so nice that they allowed it to happen to them. And in Sissy, she was not there to cause any trouble, but something from her past that just couldn't be forgiven by
Yeah.
another girl and this hen party. This is Australian or was it New Zealand? I'm
Australian.
and forgive me, listeners, for confusing those two. But yeah, it was like just maybe let things go.
Yes. Yeah, to the extreme, ultimately being a doormat in a way. But at the
Yeah,
same time, the beautiful irony of what was happening to this character and kind of her pushover qualities leading to the horror was that she did have a successful, she was an influencer. So
yeah,
it was this strange dichotomy where she had all these para friends, right?
yeah.
Parasocial connections with people that she didn't know that all kind of like worshiped her in a way. But the people that were actually in her life
They validated her.
didn't trust her, invalidated this, totally suggested that how she made money was fraud, which
Yeah,
I thought was really fascinating too, the way that it kind of deconstructs
and it really
influencers and
comes down
what
to
they're doing.
jealousy. They were jealous of
And
how
yes,
easy things were. And the ironic thing is that Sissy or Cecilia's her whole social presence is about calming and like yoga and being at peace with
what?
yourself.
Okay, explain this to me because it seemed like her biggest draw or her angle, her gimmick as this online therapist in a way was the hyperventilation therapy that she did. Have you heard of this
I
before?
have not, and I was
To me, that seems like the opposite of calming when you're just breathing really, really, really quick
yeah,
like she does.
yeah,
It seems like that's
chaotic.
completely contradictory to
Yeah,
what she's trying to do, but it was fitting given when you learn about the backstory of this girl and the girls that are involved in the hen party. You get a sense of why she's so disconnected, and it's a really gruesome scene too. It's really fun. I think all of the gore in this film is pretty damn good.
I know. Specifically the well, they hit a kangaroo, which was the equivalent of hitting a.
Kangaroo is my spirit animal, man. I had to look away, and as a
I just
horror fan, that is rare for me. But when I
yeah.
saw my spirit animal, or I guess power animal now,
There you go.
um,
I need to learn what
I
mine
had to look
is.
away.
I hadn't seen that though. It's the equivalent of hitting a deer
Right?
here, and
Yeah.
that moment reminded me of Get Out when like setting
Oh
up
yeah.
that moment of you know foreshadowing before you get to this
Yeah.
hell house.
Right. In a similar scene where you do the humane thing and you put the thing out of its misery.
Yeah, but they did it with
Uh,
a tire.
they did it with the tire both
Oh,
times.
great foreshadowing though.
It really was. I thought it was well constructed. I would argue that they could have cut about 15 minutes from it,
Yeah,
because there was some scenes that kind of just were stagnant, that were unnecessary and lingering on a single shot sort of stuff.
sure.
And toward the end, I felt like, okay, that's the end. Oh wait, no. Oh no, this is the
Yeah.
end. No, and there was a couple extra endings I felt like weren't necessary.
I was happy
But
with
as
the
a
ending
whole,
though.
the very end, yes, where it kind of looped it back, but I don't know. At some point, I was waiting for this character Alex to get back in the game and put an end to
Yeah,
everything,
yeah,
because I felt like it was dragging on a little bit too long.
sure, sure.
But when she does show up and makes a mistake, it's amazing. I was like rooting for the unexpected occurrence at the end because it
I
was
know.
so cool. And yeah, it does. Let's say there's potential for a sequel. I don't know how they'd pull it off, but one's possible. It could be called Sissy
Yeah,
2.
anything's possible.
Yeah, that was a big surprise for me, 100%.
Yeah,
That and Hellbender. And just to go back to Hellbender for a second, I just wanted to mention
please.
it sounds
Yes.
like it's going to be this demonic movie about hell, but it's not. Hellbender is the name of the band of the mother and daughter who she homeschools. They never even go in public because she's trying to keep her safe, or actually keep other people
Wow.
safe from her. But it's this fun homeschooled mom and daughter who have this like heavy metal band together. And that's the name of it. So I think I was scared maybe by the name at first. If you're not into like, you think it's gonna be like a Hellraiser sort of thing, but it's
Right.
not that at all.
All right.
So definitely you gotta catch that.
I
I'm
will.
demanding you watch that one. Okay, what else do we got here? Was there any other new ones you've recently watched in the last week?
Let me see
You've
here.
missed?
I watched, and it's not on my favorites necessarily, but I watched Nanny.
Okay, same. Is that even horror? What the fuck?
No.
What the heck?
And here's my issue with it, because I thought it was shot beautifully. It looked really, really great.
Absolutely.
I had started hearing people say, "Oh, like, this is one of the better horror movies this year," and I was like, "All right, I'll check it out." It's on Amazon Prime, and I watched the whole thing, almost waiting for something else to happen.
Yes, thank you. It was psychological horror, I guess you could say, about the haves and the have-nots.
More,
which was
more of a drama, though.
It was more of a drama. But they're hitting you over the head with the have and have-not stuff. Literally, the family that this nanny babysits for, his last name is Haves. So that kind of threw me for a loop. But you're absolutely right in terms of the filmmaking. The acting was really good. The lead was amazing. But essentially the dream sequences she have that foreshadow the untimely death of a person in her life was not enough for me to qualify it as horror. No. I don't think I would suggest it even as a drama. I think it's missable personally.
It was, and it was almost elements of like fantasy with the mermaid, and that's all I'll say about it.
Stuff. Yeah, because essentially, water is what separates her. And well, anyways, it was a meh for me.
Same.
I'm surprised I finished it, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
Another one that really missed the mark for me that I've watched that was high ranked on this list was something called A Wounded Fawn. Have you heard of this one?
I've heard of it. I have not seen it.
Essentially, it's about a serial killer who, has killed someone at first, and then the second victim, it seems like he's killed her, but it's unclear whether or not he did, because then for the subsequent 3/4 of the movie, he's kind of going through what I took to be like when a serial killer is sent to hell sort of thing, and the horrors that he then faces. Sounds good in theory. I didn't like it, though. I did not like it. I couldn't get on board with it.
All right.
It just was too fractured and convoluted for me, and I didn't actually know what was happening a lot of the time too, in a bad way. So
that's never good in a movie.
I couldn't recommend that. Maybe it's my own deficiencies, but I just was not on board for that one. And I squeezed in because it also was in the top 10 on the Rotten Tomatoes Deadstream, and while I liked it, I wouldn't put it in my top list.
Okay,
so this one, right?
Yeah, I had brought it up a couple weeks ago, and there was something about this movie that really works for me, and I think it was not just the movie itself, but it was the filmmaking team who are a husband and wife. The star of the movie wrote and directed it with his wife. And
is she the woman that's in it? The only other character that shows on screen?
No, she's not. On the other woman in it is like their friend that they make stuff with, who is also in their segment of the most recent VHS anthology. VHS, yes.
VHS
and
99?
She is like my new horror actor. Like she was so good in both of these projects. I really, really enjoyed her. But I think that's the thing I really liked about this movie is it reminded me of maybe, I'm not going to say Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell back in the day, but that idea of making a smaller film like this, contained a cabin in the woods, if you will, but with the updated social media aspect, there's humor in it. It made my 10 because I was so impressed with what they were able to do, and movies like this with and I hate that term, nobodies. There's nobody with like a name in it,
right?
But
no names.
He rather carries this movie
really well. That was hard to do, and he did do a pretty good job with it. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, because it's maybe again longer than it should have been.
Sure,
I don't know exactly, but he does pull that off. I think it was necessary to bring in that other character, and what it serves to her is really amazing. And I will say it really drew me in. It was so fun for the first like 30 minutes. It was just it was fun, and then it really does get dark. But
with some,
you do feel like you're watching him on YouTube, sort of thing.
Yeah,
you do feel like he's talking to you. It's a beautiful parasocial film in that sense. again, I just a little bit too long for me.
Understand.
But maybe it's because I've been cramming them all in
Could
recently that could have something to do with it. Maybe if it was a standalone, I wouldn't have felt that way.
Yeah.
But
And there's a couple legitimate jump scares. Yeah, everyone should see it. There's a really great couple jump scares in it. Like I said, the way they pull off humor in it, he kind of reminded me of like a young Bruce Campbell in that sense. Where
a little bit, yes.
You
I
know,
do see that
like,
vibe that you're talking
and
about.
I would bet money that Bruce Campbell is his idol. You know,
Speaking of Bruce Campbell, if I might interject here,
please.
We were going to do this, but I hadn't seen it in time. I recently crammed in Black Friday, which I think is a couple years old now. And it was a ton of fun, but it was nothing new per se.
No.
Frankly, the scenes that I liked the best were when the characters were alone talking to each other about their like actual lives, which is so strange for a zombie film to be that way. But I thought there was a lot of heart in some of the characters that aren't normally in a zombie movie.
Well,
but in terms of the overall film, it's pretty stock. Right?
They
zombies at a toy store.
Yeah, I remember I saw that. I think it came out last year, like right before the holidays. It's super fun because of who they are. They've got some names in there. Devin Sawa. And you're right. It almost felt like it only worked because they were so likable.
Yes, I think that's true. Otherwise, mixed bag. And it certainly didn't have the same sort of like amazing gore factor as some of the other ones we've mentioned.
No.
Going back to Sissy, what happens to Sissy's best friend at the end? My gosh, that's some of the most graphic stuff I've seen since. I don't know if you remember the irreversible scene where someone has
with the fire extinguisher in the face.
Yeah, that's what I was immediately sent back to.
Just mush.
It's goofy Black Friday, but that's not even from this year.
It's not from this year.
It's timely, given Black Friday was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and it's a holiday movie, and it's almost the
holidays. Speaking of holiday movies, you did cram in one recently, right? That you didn't love so much. This Christmas, Bloody Christmas.
Let me get the title right. It's or is it?
Yeah, Christmas, Bloody Christmas.
It's it feels like. What Black Christmas, what you were just talking about, tried to do, tried to have likable characters with relatable dialogue. They even like poke fun at Blumhouse. It's
something.
Here's the thing. I turned it off because maybe I just wasn't in the mood. I watched about 40 minutes into it. I don't know. I think
life's short. If you're not enjoying the 40-minute mark, I feel like you gotta.
I think so too. It's unfortunate because I mean maybe it gets even more fun, but
it did get really panned from what I was seeing. That's why I didn't really kind of give it a second thought. You know what also got panned in the same category, but I'm gonna have to give it a shot, is the horror Grinch movie. Have you heard of this?
I'll watch it.
I'm not gonna be able to resist that.
No, I will watch it. It's the same thing. Winnie the Pooh.
Sorry, go ahead.
They said they just did the same thing.
I want to see that too, though. Come on. That's gonna be interesting. I don't know that quite qualifies as horror, but that Violent Night I will watch, even though that got
100%.
Just for the sake of some Leguizamo and
David Harbour.
Yeah,
and I love that genre now of just ridiculous violence. It's like the John Wick world we're living in. That's it's on demand right now. It just became streaming. And that's streaming rentable.
It seems like a good one to have in the background, eating hors d'oeuvres, maybe playing a board game in the background. Sort of thing. You don't got to pay too much attention. That's kind of how I look at like Die Hard 2 now. I got to watch Die Hard. But Die Hard 2, I love that around Christmas too, just in the background fodder. Or an old one, we could have done a Christmas episode, but Reindeer Games, again, very gory. I don't know if I'd call it horror, but I remember really loving the twisty nature of that one.
Right. You know what movie I really liked that also has a Christmas vibe is The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Yes,
with Gina
underrated. Gina Davis,
Samuel L. Jackson.
So freaking good. The bad guy's David something. He's in so much stuff. I love that actor too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one you gotta catch if you missed it. I'm not sure it holds up now because it is pretty old.
Yeah.
But I remember really liking it at the time. What she does, cutting up some carrots, learning what she was.
She's like
never forget that.
Really good with the knife.
Very good with the knife. Okay, in terms of what else we've recently watched, was there anything else you wanted to
Well,
mention?
I think we're at the 45-minute mark here, and I'd like to just
Okay.
maybe just jump into like what made your top 10? Not necessarily in any
Okay.
order, but what were some of your
But
favorites from this
really
year?
quick, I do have to downplay one that did make it in the top 10 of Rotten Tomatoes that I watched through and didn't understand. And I
Okay.
think I understood what they were attempting for, but we're all going to the World's Fair because it's made a lot of people's lists. And boy, did I just not connect to this movie at all. I would suggest skipping it unless you're a tween, because the horror aspect of it is very slim, and it's really like watching like one of the worst YouTubers ever for 2 hours straight. Sort
Boy,
of thing.
oh
It was
boy.
really boring to me, and I kept waiting for something to happen that never happened.
That's disappointing.
But yes, you're absolutely right. Let's dive into what we demand our listeners watch before they don't survive.
Yeah.
Don't stay alive.
Well, as I mentioned, Deadstream was in my 10 favorites.
Deadstream's in yours. Hellbender and Sissy, we talked about. Those are both in my must watch.
Sissy
and we mentioned You Won't Be Alone, which is that other witch movie, in my top.
Speak No Evil, the one I mentioned about the two families, is in my top 10.
That's probably the next one I'm going to watch based on that making your list and my having missed it. That sounds fun with the two families and being forced to do stuff you don't want to do. I like that.
Did you ever end up seeing?
Did Prey make yours?
Prey made mine. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
It was just such a refreshing take on a property we love so much. How could you not?
I know.
You know?
Here's
just
another
like
one that might
owned streaming for a while too.
Surprise you that made my list was Fresh.
Fresh. Did I see Fresh? You got.
I don't know if you did. It's on Hulu. It stars Sebastian Stan. He's a cannibal.
Yes, the cannibal one.
Yeah,
I did see that.
I loved
that. For some
that.
reason, it wasn't on this Rotten Tomatoes list. I wonder why. Of the 100 most popular, so
I don't know.
I liked it though. I could see it making my list barely, but I think I do like my 10 better than that one. But Sebastian Stan was great in it.
He's so much
and I like
fun.
that actress too. She was good. The Crawdaddy's actress. I don't know her name.
Right. I don't remember her name.
Crawdad movie.
She'll be super famous in a year, and we'll learn her name then.
Yes. That was a good flick. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I could see myself down the line maybe watching that one again. So that to me is what a top 10 would do. It's something that I won't be able to resist watching again at some point. Barbarian, obviously.
Barbarian's in my list for sure.
Barbarian. We didn't do a whole podcast on it, but we devoted a lot of the Airbnb one to it, I believe. Yeah, that was so surprising and just had such a beautiful mythos that could be built into a franchise that you can't go wrong with. Barbarian.
Right.
What else you got?
I have Nope.
Nope is on my list, of course. You can't go wrong with Nope. That we did a whole cast on that one because it's that rich. And
here's a question: did this make your list? Scream.
No. Scream didn't do anything really new for me. Did it make yours?
It made mine, but for this reason, because it was out of everything on my list, it was a franchise movie that's still doing it.
Yes.
I thought they did a fun job with it, and I'm excited to see. Have you seen the teaser for the new one on the subway?
I have, and it looks great. I hope they're not giving away that one character dies, like in that teaser.
I would hate to see.
I'm more excited, I think, for the second one than I was for this reboot, mostly because they're not going to be cramming in Nev Campbell unnecessarily. You know what I mean? That was one of my biggest issues with this last one. Was I felt like we were jamming stuff in that was unnecessary, and I feel like they should have just gone with a full reboot sort of thing. But at the same time, I guess it did play into the characters' motives and all that stuff. But I'm more excited for the second one because now we got understanding these characters. I'm rooted in them. I want to see more Jenna Ortega after Wednesday, and I think she'll be more of a central lead in this new one.
She's a star now.
So yeah, I'm pumped for the last one, but that wouldn't. I'm not going to watch Scream 5 anytime soon. I think even before the next one comes out. But I did really like it, and I would say it's certainly better than Scream 2 and Scream 3.
Oh yeah.
So for me, it goes 1, 4, 5, 3, 2. I think we did that. Listen to the podcast on Scream, and you'll hear my definitive.
If you want to hear our orders, listen to that one. Now, here's another one on my list that Jenna Ortega's in that you probably may not have seen, called X.
I did see X,
You
and
did?
I loved X. X probably would be my 11th. X almost made it. I haven't seen Pearl yet, though, but I've seen
Pearl
X.
is also on my list. I was
Is Pearl
so
better?
impressed. Pearl is really fun, and I was so impressed with the turnaround of these films for both to release in the same year and
be high quality. Like
and
that.
be real. Ty West is a great writer director. I really just think you can continue on this franchise with these characters. I love the time period they're sent in, or so Pearl
So
is more of an origin story.
Right, yes. But when it moves forward, is it really just is going to be like this horror that's rooted in suppressed sexuality sort of thing? Is that like the main theme of it, would you argue? Or
No, I think the main theme of especially Pearl is about finding your place in the world. Pearl is all about a movie, a girl who wants to leave this town and become famous, and she'll do anything to gain that fame.
I do want the preview is amazing. The preview is so fun in itself.
Yeah,
so I know I'm gonna like it.
It's
and you really like that actress too. So
yeah,
I gotta watch that one for sure.
Yeah.
One I don't think is gonna make your list, but I freaking loved it was Hatching.
It did not make my list. No, I
I loved the creature feature aspect of it. I just thought it was so interesting with this bird kind of turning into her. I don't know. It just hit me at the right time. I love Hatching. One that didn't make your list because I know you haven't seen it yet, but you got to because it's flipping awesome. It probably would be my top 3 of the 10 is The Menu.
Right.
And we could potentially do a whole cast on The Menu at some point.
I would love to.
So many good performers in it. Speaking of John Leguizamo, it's just I don't want to give too much away because I want you to see it.
Yeah,
it's not what people think. It's not a cannibal movie, so don't go in there thinking they're going to be eating people because there's none of that. It's much more interesting than that, especially if you're somebody who watches cooking shows.
Okay,
then this is going to just satiate. Yes, I think you're going to love The Menu.
Love it.
And I only have one more that we haven't talked about, but we did talk about in the cast, and that's Men. Men made my list just for being like the most head trippy horror I've probably seen all year.
Yeah, I would say Men is right up there with You Won't Be Alone as far as elevated horror, if you will.
Right.
That's I really do appreciate. What was the other one with Nimi about the Lamb?
Oh yes.
Was that
this year?
I don't. That's why I'm questioning it because it's
right. I think it might have been last year.
Okay. It may have
because we talked about it in the first episode. I don't know, but Lamb would definitely be up there for me too in terms of must see. Probably more in top 20-ish than
technically
top
2021.
Okay, but that was also good. Naomi knows how to pick her movies.
Sure does. And
is there any ones that you haven't seen? Oh, do you still got stuff on your list?
No, I don't know if did we mention this? I don't know if it made your top 10. Was Smile? Did it make your top 10?
It is bolded here. Yes, it did. I liked Smile a lot.
So
I know you had mixed feelings, but I loved it.
It's my number 11.
Okay, fair.
It's fair. Like almost I'd hate to say the return of franchise horror, but it is kind of the return of big budget studio horror.
Oh, that isn't what are those, the Conjurings or the Annabelle stuff that I don't really love that much. The first Conjuring's really good, but when they start milking them, I struggle.
Right.
But this I think could be a better angle to run with the daisy chain, whatever sort of horror.
Yeah.
It looks like my video's gone. Huh?
I just noticed that too. We lost your camera.
Oh, we're done. It says finished. Did we just run out of time?
Oh, weird.
It just happened though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's so fucking weird. It's never happened before. The audio's still going, so we can release the full audio.
Recording? Because mine doesn't show that anything's recording.
No. The video timer has stopped. I'm gonna have to complain about that. It should have plenty.
Okay, well let's just wrap it up then.
Let's wrap it up. 2022 had a lot of fun, and I actually take back what I just said about the studio horror, because Prey was a great example of that. I think there's a nice 2022, to sum up, was a nice balance of big in theater horror and, you know, streaming success with stuff like Sissy. Right. And I'm excited to see what 2023 holds. I'd love to start thinking about what everyone wants to see next year.
Absolutely.
What
we
what
do intend to give you a preview episode, hopefully next.
Yeah, we'll do some research.
I'm curious just to myself dig into what's going to be coming out in 2023, because other than Scream 6, I'm not really privy.
Yeah, me neither. Other than that, I'd just like to thank everybody for listening to us and watching us this year. This was our first year of doing all the horrible things, and we appreciate all the listens. Happy holidays.
1,000 thank yous for staying alive and continue to stay alive.